Welcome to this evening's virtual event for HWS, everyone. My name is Melanie Sage. I go by Mel. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the one of the senior associate directors of admissions here at HWS, and I also handle all the transfer admissions for Hobart and William Smith. I am delighted and honored to have with us this evening from our physics department, Professor Don Spector, who has been at the colleges for a number of years. He can tell you a little bit more about that. But Don
All the
is a
years.
true gem. We're lucky, very lucky to have him with us here at the colleges and with us tonight. And so without further ado, um, Don, let me just wait. Sorry, 1 second. Just admitting a couple more people here.
Yes. Keep seeing those little pop-ups of people.
Yeah.
Yep.
So folks, if feel free to have your cameras turned on for this call or not, whatever you're most comfortable with is absolutely fine with us. Professor Spector is going to have some remarks, give some remarks. When he finishes, there'll be time for Q&A. And you can feel free at that point to unmic and ask questions or to put your questions in the chat, and I will manage passing those along to Professor Spector. So thanks again, Professor Spector, for being with us this evening. Thanks to all of you out there in the ether for joining us. And let's get rolling.
All right. So welcome all of you. I'm Don Spector. As Mel said, I'm a professor in the physics department. I've been at the institution since 1989. One of the people I saw the names here is who's here is one of the students who was here when I first came here. So um, but I'm sure there are, lots of you from all different backgrounds and you're interested in learning about HWS and our engineering program. Um, I will talk a little bit about these things, but I'm more than happy to answer your questions, and it's probably even more useful, frankly, to answer all your questions. But let me give a brief overview of, we're here to talk about engineering, and this will spill over a little bit into the sciences as well. As I said, I've been here at the colleges since 1989. So I've seen a lot. I've seen all different permutations of students who have come through our programs. There's no one size fits all approach. So I'm going to describe some ways that this works. But if your situation is a little different, great. That's what's been happening for 35 years uh, that I've been here. So if you're on the call, you presumably know that as a liberal arts college, Hobart and William Smith colleges does not have an engineering program itself, but we do have students interested in engineering. And so what we have is arrangements with two other schools, Dartmouth and Columbia, each of which have, of course, world-renowned engineering schools. And we have a program which allows students the possibility of spending 5 years in total, 3 years with us and 2 years at the partner institution, Dartmouth or Columbia, at the end of which you'll have two bachelor's degrees, one in whatever you major in at HWS. 9 times out of 10, if not more, the engineering students are majoring in physics, both because the topics line up and also just as a practical matter, the coursework lines up, and an engineering degree from our partner institution. And there are little specific details in each of the programs, which I can get into, but I think that's not the really interesting part. I think the more interesting part is like the big picture of why do this? What do you get out of it? How does it work for students? Um, so when you come to HWS, you don't come with a declared major, and that's true here as well. The engineering program is something which is in principle available to any student at the colleges. And what will happen is at a point 2 or 3 years in, after taking various prerequisite courses here, you then send form into the partner institution and apply to finish up there. So you don't come in with a declared major, but because of the way the program works, you have to come in prepared to at least lay the coursework to keep this option available to you. So what's the point of this option? You're in high school, you're graduating, you've been interested in things that are science, tech oriented, and you're wondering what to do next. And many people know that engineering is a possibility for that, but it's not the only possibility. And so students who come here at HWS who are thinking about engineering, what will happen is in your first couple of years, you'll be taking prerequisite courses that the engineering schools say, here's the deal. If you want to come here to do engineering, you need this background. Now, if you're at an engineering college, what will happen is in your first couple of years, you'll be taking basic engineering and basic science sort of side by side, and then you'll special off into engineering. You specialize into your engineering field. Here, instead, you're getting your basic science courses at HWS, as well as starting in on your major. Then you spend your first year at it depends if it's Dartmouth, Columbia, but and eventually complete a major here. But then at Dartmouth and Columbia, that's where you'll be doing your basic engineering courses, typically in the first year, and your specialization courses in engineering. So at the end of the day, there's sort of a divvying up. Instead of side by side basic engineering and basic science, you're doing the science first, but going further in the science than you would at an engineering school because you're going to do a major here at HWS and then doing the engineering. Um, Now, as you can imagine, spending only 3 years at HWS and fitting all this in, you can't put things off. And so we make sure this whole program hinges on the close advising we do here. We make sure that if you let us know you're interested in engineering, that you're getting advising from day one on what courses you have to take so you have that option available to you. It's always hard to know, right? You're looking at this from the point of view of you're about to start college. So I'm talking a little bit from that point of view, but there's also what happens at the end of the day. What do you get after these 5 years? So at the end of the 5 years, one of the things that the engineering program will offer, should you choose to do it, is that you will wind up, first of all, with 2 degrees. You will wind up with a major in whatever you major in at HWS and whatever engineering specialization you do with the partner institution. You will have been at 2 different institutions, a liberal arts college, developing all the critical thinking, communication skills, and so forth that you get in that environment. And then you will have spent 2 years at Dartmouth or Columbia with all the first-rate engineering labs and education you have available there. You wind up with connections to 2 career services networks. You wind up with just sort of 2 of everything. And I know speaking to my counterparts at the engineering schools, one of the things they say is that when uh, recruiters come looking at students, and in this program, your last year, your 5th year is at the partner institution, um, the 3-2 students stand out and are of interest to employers because they're bringing 2 sets of skills, 2 sets of experiences, sort of 2 for the price of 1. So you get that. In addition, though, as I said, if you're looking from the other side, you're coming in, you're thinking, maybe I want to do engineering, maybe I don't. And that's a great place to be at this point. You enter college, you think you know what you want to do, and I've seen students make all sorts of changes along the way. And so the deal is that we make sure you're taking the classes so this is available, but you're not locked in. Of the students who come in thinking about doing engineering, nearly all of them wind up in some kind of STEM major and some kind of STEM-focused curriculum. Some of them will proceed and complete the engineering program as just right on track, just go ahead like that. Others will decide they want to do engineering, but will decide that for their particular interests, they're going to spend 4 years at HWS. There are things they want to take advantage of here. They want to do a double major in French. They want to do research in environmental studies, whatever it is, and then do a master's in engineering. And in some fields of engineering, that's also a great approach. Some people get interested in other things entirely. One student who decided he wanted to go into intellectual property law after his first about 3 semesters here. Others go into other scientific things. A number of students, sometimes a student will come in thinking they want to do chemical engineering. They realize, oh, actually, I want to do chemistry. Actually, I don't. And so you have that flexibility. You have that space where you come in where you're going to be exploring those science foundations, getting the close advising, and figuring out what's the path that makes sense for you. And as I talk to the students when they come in, and I've been doing the engineering program pretty much nonstop since 1997 when my previous colleague, Alan Russell, turned it over to me when he retired. Um, so I've been working with the students over the years, and the idea is that, we're trying to find out what works for you. Um, if you want to go into civil engineering, you're going to be the kind of person who goes out and is certifying that bridges are safe. Like you're going to get that ABET certified, that's the technical term. Engineering, you be like, it is a beautiful pipeline and to do that. You're going into biomedical engineering. There are so many ways into that field. We've had students get into that field through engineering. We've had students get into that field not through engineering. That's, many pipelines in. And so, but the whole point is we know that. And so you come in and we get to know you, we make sure to point you in the right direction. There are minor differences between Columbia and Dartmouth in terms of how they structure their program, but the most obvious one is that Dartmouth, it's typically 2 years at HWS, third year at Dartmouth, fourth year back at HWS, so you get to spend senior year with your cohort, and then fifth year at Dartmouth. So some people like that for having their fourth year here, and junior year, a lot of other people are studying abroad, so maybe it's not so bad being away. Columbia, 3 years here, 2 years at Columbia. Some people like the cleanliness of that, right? They get to not the back and forth. There's not a right or wrong way, and some people they're choosing one or the other because some people love New York City and some people love being in Hanover where they can step into the woods. So the main thing is that what we like about this program is that it creates opportunities for you as students to figure out what works for you, to figure out what your best path forward is, and to not feel locked in too early, but to have that opportunity going forward. And I would say that probably translates to much of what we do at HWS. I'll just mention briefly, I happen to be a physics professor. My background is not in engineering. That is not my specialty. But because I've done this so long, I know, right, really how to advise you. I've been up to Dartmouth, right? That goes on. But I would say that just to give you a window into the sciences too, because I'm sure a lot of you are interested in the sciences. One of the things that makes HWS great is what my colleagues offer to other students. So I can tell you a little bit about chemistry, biology, geoscience, math, CS, psychological sciences. We can tell you a lot about physics. But what I really like to do to convey what it's like is just to mention what sorts of things my colleagues are within the physics department. My colleague Ted Allen and I, we both do mathematical, particle physics, the sort of strange theoretical stuff, but we also offer courses at the very edges of what's available. I'm teaching right now a course in quantum computing. You may have seen the news out of Microsoft recently about quantum computing advances. Like we're dealing with that. My colleague Steve Pan works with LIGO, which detects gravitational waves from black holes that collide into each other, a project that won the leaders of the project the Nobel Prize a few years ago. Leslie Hebb, she's an astrophysicist. There's an observatory on campus. She finds planets around stars other than the sun. Her students have been at the Space Sciences Telescope Institute. They've been on observing runs in Chile. And then my colleague, Ilana Dimitriou, she's gotten heavily involved in environmental sciences. She's had a bevy of students using drones to study algae blooms in Seneca Lake, something which previously was a much more laborious process than the boat going out there. So it's both state-of-the-art spectroscopy as well as taking advantage of what drone technology does. And that's just our department, right? Chemistry, biology, there's been a whole wonderful collaboration where some of the organic chemists have students developing potential anti-cancer drugs, which they then pipe over to their biology colleagues, whose students then explore in the lab. what the efficacy of those things are. So while you're at HWS, you have access to all of that. Um, and if you're an engineering student, that doesn't preclude you from doing those things too. Misty Chen, uh, who's now in a PhD program in aerospace engineering, aeronautical engineering, she did the Dartmouth program. She also did an honors project in astronomy. Uh, and Walden Marshall, who did the engineering program as well, he did research with on network communications and models of the brain with Dan Graham, who does neuroscience, and Jan Howe in our Math CS department. So we're here to talk about engineering, but understand that you're getting advantage, be able to take advantage of all the science stuff going on as well. It's not an either or situation in your curriculum, but also in your experience. Um, I think that's the highlights. I don't really have a script here, so I don't know, Mel, is there anything obvious that I have left out that I should have mentioned?
Um,
And of
well,
course, all of you may have
yeah,
questions too, but Mel is
yeah.
my
One
conscience.
question, I don't know if you mentioned this, but what are the majority of students coming to HWS and pursuing engineering of the STEM offerings? What are the most popular majors? Would that be physics and
Oh, it's
biochem?
100%. I mean, the ones who do engineering, it's 90+% physics, because when you look at the prerequisite courses that you'll need for Dartmouth or Columbia, um, 2 semesters of intro physics, one of chemistry, one of computer science, two of calculus, and then um, a mathematical techniques of physics course that we offer. That everybody has to do. And then depending on your specialization, there are some additional things that you might have to take. And if you look at that list of courses, uh, not all of them count towards physics, but more of them count towards physics than anything else. And the other, so as a practical matter, that's the case. But also, if you're looking, I say we probably had more students interested in civil, mechanical, and electrical engineering than other fields. And those are fields really closely aligned with physics, so it makes sense. Now, that's not exclusively the case. Uh, we have um, had a couple of math majors. Um, we've had chemistry majors. We've had uh, the only not sure we've had any biology majors. We've had a CS major. Um, so, and again, it's not that we've had environmental studies majors, so it's not a requirement that you major in physics, but it often makes the most sense and also reflects student interest. And it is important that you take certain courses in your first year, or otherwise you can just be out of sequence and this won't be available to you. But again, we make sure that that happens. And then sometimes I'll have a student come in who's like, I'm not really sure. I maybe want to do this, maybe want to do that. And so we make sure that you're getting that groundwork in the first year, but that you're also exploring, um, whether it's something outside the sciences, or maybe it's like, I'm not sure. Like, I'm just out of high school. Engineering seems cool. Medicine seems cool. I don't know what to do. All right, let's make sure that you get a little bit of exposure in both places so that you're on track however you're going to go.
That's
So,
super helpful. Thank you. Thank you,
yeah.
Don. Folks who are joining us this evening, what questions do you have? You can put them in the chat. Oops, looks like we
I'm,
have some.
I'm looking at the chat. Um,
Yeah.
so, so admission is not automatic. Um, so, and the way it works, Columbia gives a guideline. So Columbia's guideline is that in the prerequisite courses, and Columbia will identify a set of those basic prerequisite courses that I mentioned. And then depending on whether you're interested in electrical engineering or civil engineering or whatever, they're going to have some additional courses that they list. Um, Actually, I'm just thinking right now of a student who wanted to do earth and environmental engineering at Columbia, who was a geoscience major, which made sense given his interest, right? Um, so they say they want to see a 3.3 average and at least a B in all your technical courses uh, when first you take them. So They don't want to see you fail a course and then take it again and get an A. They want to see you right away take it. Um, and then Columbia also asks for 3 letters. It'll be one from the engineering coordinator. Right now, that's me. One from a math professor. One from a science professor. One of the other sciences. Um, with Dartmouth, they don't give rules like that. I would say that in my experience, um, again, neither place has like a hard and fast grade GPA cutoff, but I would say with Dartmouth, you're going in with a 3.8 GPA. You're in solid contention there. At a 3.2, you're probably not going to get into Dartmouth. Um, but both places try to look at holistically. So like I know at Dartmouth, like if you've got an A plus average, but your application, nothing in your application suggests that you really have any interest in engineering, you've just checked off the classes, they will probably not take you and they'd rather take someone with a strong background, but not a perfect background, but who's got clear demonstrated uh, interest. Over the years that I've been doing this, our track record of students getting in is extremely high. I would say that's a function of having really, it's good students, right? It's not that, but what they do know is that the education we provide prepares students well. So our students go off and they succeed, and so they know that. Um, I don't know if I have exact numbers of, you know, how many get or not, but it is the vast, vast majority. If I go back to we did do a study as of a few years ago, and at that point, I think over a period of some 25 years, there were only 2 students who had wanted to do engineering via 3-2 who did not were not able to do that. And if we're completely honest here, one of them had a transcript that it would have surprised nobody, but he applied anyway. And the other was sort of an edge case. That's no guarantee. So, we shouldn't, would you want to be clear about that? Uh, but I will also say that our track record for those students who spend 4 years at HWS and then want to go and do engineering has also been very high, including sometimes students who graduate and then decide to get interested in engineering. And we had one, it stayed in Geneva. He'd been a biology major. He was staying in Geneva, assistant coach on the tennis team, but also started taking some classes in math and physics, and then went off to do engineering. Um, all right. Um,
Financial aid.
yeah, let me come through here. So, and
Yeah.
the process, I would say that also the students who come in, uh, students figure out if this is what they want to do. I'd say the ones who've gone have been 100% happy. Um, So there are, as I said, very few cases of students who haven't gotten in, and sometimes there's a case someone didn't get into Dartmouth, but then they got into Columbia, but that's again, small case. So financial aid is frankly outside my function and my expertise and my role, and the rules are constantly changing. What I can say is this, that what with Columbia, it's pretty clear and straightforward. You are under HWS financial aid the first 3 years and Columbia the next 2 years. Oh, and by the way, Columbia will let you do it as a 4+2 if you want. We've had one student do that. Dartmouth is a little trickier because that first year at Dartmouth, because it's typically 2, 1, then 1 back and 1 again, that third year, Dartmouth says, well, I don't know if you're really here. You're really more of a visiting student, or say your way. So the way it has been treated, but this is one of those things you should get clarity on it at the time, is that your 5th year at Dartmouth, you're under Dartmouth financial aid. And as long as your first year at Dartmouth is your third year and you're coming back to HWS, we have treated it like we treat study abroad, which is that you're still covered under our financial aid. I don't know. I'm not saying that I have any reason to expect that that will change. I'm just saying that is outside my pay grade, outside my role, and but that is how it has been for many, many years now. Um, all right, let's see. Um, you can apply to both. Somebody asks. Typically, you apply to Dartmouth in the middle of your sophomore year. Your application window is sort of the applications become available in December and they're due at the end of January. And typically, you're applying to Columbia in your junior year. So mostly students aren't applying to both. Uh, as I said, I can't think of one case where a student didn't get into Dartmouth and then the next year applied to Columbia. So that has happened. Um, are there specific engineering programs that are geared to this or would be available for most of the specialties? You can do anything that Dartmouth and Columbia have, straight up. Are there things where it works better than others? I personally think so. Uh, but that may not be so much by field, but by student. Uh, what I will say is that for civil, mechanical, and electrical, like it's a really clean situation. Biomedical, environmental engineering, it kind of depends what you want to do. I think there are a lot of ways that that could unfold. Um, but yes, you have available to you all the engineering options at schools. One thing I should mention, you sometimes hear about people doing what's called software engineering. That's basically, I mean, it's a high level of computer programming. Software engineers are not engineers in the traditional sense of engineering. And if what you are interested in is the software side of things, I don't recommend the engineering program. You want to stay here, major in computer science, get a lot of experience. Also take some of the classes in the physical sciences where you're going to actually exercise some of those coding skills. I know in Professor Hebb's observational astronomy class, students are uh, using their coding skills to analyze data from the observatory. So software engineering, that's just a caveat in general. And in some places, computer science emerged out of electrical engineering historically. So some places will have a computer science department in the engineering school. Some will have it in the same school as math and physics, the arts and sciences school. But that's historical. Um, and I would say we've had students go into, I think, almost every one of these fields you can imagine. And I should say that after they graduate, students, and I've seen students, 2 years out, and I've seen students 20 years out. Um, they've gone into a range of fields. Scott Thomas has been around the world on construction projects of various kinds. Um, as a, I think he's a civil engineer. Matt Johannesson, his first job out of Dartmouth was working on the project constructing the tower that was replacing the Twin Towers, which had been destroyed in 9/11. He was on the Freedom Tower project. Justin Partika went into finance, went into banking. Um, Emily Cummings is a working environmental engineer, actually in the upstate New York area. Some students have gone on to PhDs in biomedical or aeronautical engineering. Uh, so it's, again, all the possible futures for an engineer are also available to you. Um, how have prior students managed the social transition of the program? Um, so obviously, I'm not living with them. I don't know, but I do talk to them. Um, I would say 100% of the students who have done the engineering program have been enthusiastically happy that they have done so. Uh, I think that question of, do you go back and forth to Dartmouth or do you just do 3 and then 2 at Columbia? I'm sure there's some self-selection that the students who like mixing things up a little bit will take that option. The ones who like things more predictable might choose Columbia. Um, but from what I've seen in the interactions with students, it's not a big deal, which is gratifying. Right now, Will Russell is a student who was at Dartmouth last year. He's a senior this year. He's in my quantum computing class, and yeah, he's as fully integrated as anybody. And one thing to remember is that at HWS, fully 60% of our students do study abroad. And so and most people are doing that their junior year. So what you figure is that each semester your junior year, 30% of the people are away. You might be in that 30% one semester, and then the next semester, another 30% of the people are away. So if you're away in that junior year, you're not standing out. It's not unusual, right? It's not like, oh, it's only the engineers or something. Um, so And I will say also one thing that's nice from I like about the Dartmouth side of things is I get to see the students when they come back and they get to bring their experience that they had there into things. Who was it? Jasper White. Uh, actually, Jasper. I think Scott Callanan too. Both did. You have an option of doing an honors project your senior year. They both were at Dartmouth. their third year. And when they came back, both did honors projects where they tied in their engineering interests to their physics interests, which was quite cool. Um, yes, it is possible to major in environmental studies as environmental sciences. Emily Cummings did that. The list is a little tricky for Columbia because Columbia updates its list each year. They only tweak it a little bit, and then the list varies by um, subdiscipline. And then they list what Columbia courses, and we have our translation, and it's not always one-to-one. Like we have a course, Physics 285. It's such a great and intense course that it substitutes for two of the requirements. So I don't like to have the Columbia requirements up there. I mean, you can find them on Columbia's website, but you won't be able to interpret them. Uh, Dartmouth is a little more straightforward. I can just tell you what they are, uh, which is it's the minimal requirements. But again, you're going to want to do more than that. It's Physics 1 and 2, which at our school is Physics 150 and 160. It's Chem 110 or Chem 190, either one, semester chemistry. It's Computer Science 124, Intro to Computer Science. And you don't need to remember these numbers, it's the intros. Um, it's Calc 1 and Calc 2. If you have AP, great. And then our mathematical methods course. Um, Columbia has those requirements. They also require you to take intro economics, but then it also gets a little bit fine-tuned. Oh, if you're doing civil engineering, this and this, that. And the problem is they don't put that updated information on until next fall for the new class. So I can't list it and tell it to you because it could technically change. Will it change? The extent to which it changes is sometimes they will tweak one of the upper level classes that they're looking for, right? The core is going to stay unchanged. Uh, are you able to study abroad and do this program? You should not plan on studying abroad doing this program. Can it happen? Yes, it has happened, but it is exceptional. But what is possible, we do have a number of short-term study abroad programs, 2 or 3 weeks in length. I'm not sure. Mel might know better than I do, but like in January and then in May/June. Um, and I know that like my colleague, I mentioned Professor Heb, who does astronomy, she did one down in Chile with May Farnsworth from the Spanish and Hispanic Studies Department. And she did, uh, uh, which was done, I believe, over a January thing. So those types of short-term study abroad programs are ideal for the engineering students. If you imagine you're trying to get complete within 3 years a major and the engineering prerequisites and our distribution requirements slash the goals, because that's what we call them, in 3 years. You don't have to take 32 classes in 3 years, but you do have to get all that in. And then you try to throw in studying abroad. It's not realistic. Does some student figure out how to do it? Yes. We had one student who actually thought he had it figured out how to do it, and then the math department moved a course from the fall to the spring semester, and everything kind of fell apart. And then we found a way to rescue it, but like, so don't count on that. Uh, and rough split between students choosing Columbia versus Dartmouth. This just morphs over time. I don't really have a clear sense. I'll go through, we'll have in any given year, I'll say 10 to 20, 1 year's 2 dozen students coming in saying, I'm thinking about engineering. Most of those students will not do 3-2, although it doesn't mean they don't wind up doing engineering later. And it's not because they're failing out of calculus. It's because they decide they want to take full advantage of 4 years at HWS. And so we'll have anywhere, I don't know, 3 to 6 students applying in a given year. Fraction Columbia Dartmouth, over the long haul, it probably averages out to be about even, but we'll go through a period of 4 years where there's lots of Columbia. Recently, there's been more Dartmouth. And I don't find any rhyme or reason to it. Just seems to be the flow. Are summer session classes available to help with this load? It is possible. It's not. We certainly do have some off-term classes. It's actually, how do I want to say this? The main place where that might show up is sometimes there's a student who, um, let's say they realize they're not going to get Calc 1 and Calc 2 done in their first year. And so they get Calc 1 done and they take Calc 2 over the summer. I think that makes sense. The classes that you're taking here, what Dartmouth and Columbia are counting on is they know our classes. And so the core requirements, all of that is going to be happening through us. The load is not so much heavy as restrictive. So you can get all the classes in. What it does is it leaves you with a little less flexibility because you're getting your major done in 3 years, you're getting your distribution done in 3 years, and then on top of your major, like I'll just say physics, right? The calculus and the physics, that stuff will count towards your major, but the computer science and chem course will be on top of it. So, um, but yes, we do have what's called Maymester classes, and you're certainly those are available to you as they are to any other student. I haven't found that most students interested in engineering are finding that option particularly relevant. Um, but each student is different, and so I'd have to look back and think, is there anybody who has, and there probably is. Um, all right, I think I've hit all the questions in the that I saw in the chat, but I'm scanning and talking, and I might have missed something. So if others have questions, now's certainly a good time, whether it's just popping it onto the audio or putting it in the chat. Um,
We will be sharing.
I should also
Yeah,
add,
we
if you
will.
have questions that's not just about engineering, but about the sciences or other things at HWS, between Mel and me, one of us is going to know the answer. I should say some people are interested in sports too. Engineering students are athletes. Yes, it's not an issue. Um, and in fact, I think Marcus Lenz, he was on the football team at HWS, and I think he's also been playing football at Columbia. Um, and I think Scott Kalman sailed at Dartmouth, so sometimes you're even able to do it at both places.
Okay. There's a new one done.
A new one. AP Calc AB. So Calc AB, given if that places you out of Calculus 1, then you're fine. You don't have to take Calc 1. You'll take Calc 2. If you have AP Calc BC, you get, that you get it's a 4 or 5, I think we give credit for, it places you out. That's fine. I will say that for the AP tests, AP Calculus will easily and automatically basically transfer if you get a decent score on the exam and count for the requirement. AP Chemistry, we will generally not place you out of chemistry here. And AP Physics, there are like 4 different AP Physics tests. Uh, and what we do in general, the short version on that is that there's Physics 1 and 2, which don't use calculus. They do not place you out of things. There's Physics C, but there's Physics C Mechanics and Physics C E&M. And in cases where students have taken one of those tests, we have to make an individual assessment of do you place out or do you not. There's not the calculus AP exam is frankly the one AP exam where it's a pretty reliable thing where the score on the exam and whether you should be placed out is like it's a pretty clear match. Um, and the other ones, like they're great classes, but it's not always the same. So we figure that out. AP Geo, I know nothing about, but geoscience is not specifically required for the engineering program. If you're going to Columbia and Earth and Environmental Engineering, they will want some geoscience classes. Uh, but if it's AP Geo, meaning AP Geography, then no, not relevant. Dual enrollment. Um, I believe the chemistry department has a fairly. I should look. I don't know for a fact, but I think in general, chemistry wants you to take um, their intro course in chemistry. Is how they do it. Uh, Anticipate any issues with your research funding. Um, so of the of the various people who have various grants. Obviously, it is a time of some turmoil in that realm, um, but I don't see us as being in a um, the kinds. I don't see that as being as significant an issue for us as it is as a research university, um, just because of the uh, just the way the whole funding infrastructure works. I'm I've been at HWS for all this time, but prior to that, well, I spent a year in Europe when I was a postdoc at Cornell, and then I did all my various degrees at Harvard. So I've seen, how the various places work. And one of the things that HWS, I think, has always been very mindful of is that when we when we pull in grants, and we do pull in grants, and I've had NSF grants, Steve Penn, Leslie Hebb, and you can go through and all very, and I know my department, uh, but also, um, but we also make sure that the ability to do our jobs is not dependent on those, right? So that we will be able to support students with our research activities either way. Um, does the combination have impact on a path to MS in engineering? Not really, um, in that, um, I mean, just back to the previous question. So, I mean, yes, the situation with research funding in the US is significant, and it is of concern in the broad picture of science and education and technology. So I don't want to underestimate that. I don't think it particularly singles us out. And if I would say that in some ways we might be a little bit more protected against those things. Um, the one thing I'll say about the path to MS of engineering is this. At Dartmouth, there is an option after you complete your thing at Dartmouth to stay on for another year. I mean, I think you have to apply; they have to want you. But I know Eric Russell did that. I'm not sure how many of our students have done that, but I know some have. Um, I will also mention that with Columbia, they also have. How many students do this? You can. Columbia is a school that will take students for a master's degree who don't have an undergraduate engineering degree, but I don't know that our being in this program particularly makes that easier or harder. But I think with Dartmouth, I think that that pathway to the Dartmouth MS in engineering is probably a little bit of a streamlined thing, if that's what you wanted to do. Um, one other interesting thing about Dartmouth I'll mention is that Dartmouth has uh, two versions of its engineering degree for their own students. I don't remember, for us, it's just one. But when their own students do the Bachelor of Engineering degree, the other one might be a Bachelor of Science, Bachelor, I'm not sure. When they do the Bachelor of Engineering degree, a lot of their students wind up staying about 4.5 years. So it's not, um, you're not just standing out at the 5 years for that reason. Um, other questions?
Anything we haven't addressed or that you're wondering about, feel free to ask it now.
Yep. And as I said, even if it's not engineering, like, because it may be like there's another, one of these Zoom sessions on some other topic, but you don't want to go to the whole session because you got one little question. Maybe we'll know the answer, or maybe we won't. Looking quiet.
Good. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this evening.
Yes.
John, Professor Spector, thank you so much for leading the charge. You are amazing as always. And oh, you're welcome, everybody. We're happy you're here. We do post these Zoom recordings to our YouTube channel just as soon as they're edited. So there'll be a whole selection of um, recordings on various topics on our YouTube channel. So just look for us there. And please stay tuned, students. Be looking in your portals, be checking your email and text for upcoming Zoom events that we'll be offering. Thank you all so much.
And I'll also just say that we appreciate your coming this way. The questions were great, and I think
They
I
were.
know how important it is to, you know, get some of these things figured out before you go off. I'll just say if those of you who haven't visited campus yet, if you have the opportunity to visit, I think you'll have a good time and get to see some of this what we're talking about in action. Uh, but I thank you all for coming and really, really appreciate your interest.
Thank you, everyone, and congrats to our students on being accepted. Take care.